When you say doomed Indiana Jones line, I'm not sure if you mean their 3 3/4 retro line or their 6-inch line. You know, there are some companies out there doing it half in. If you're going to get into the toy industry, be prepared to go all in. Hello, Valaverse fans. We decided to bring back a series that has been very requested by you, the fans. And that is the Valaverse Declassified series, where we answer all of your burning questions about Valaverse, Action Force, any other brands we may have, just toys or life in general. So let's see what you've all had to say, shall we? Laser Pants, Ryan. It all started when I made my first order on laserpants.com, and my order was graciously packed and sent to me very swiftly. And within that order was this amazing photo of Ryan in all of his glory. And it is what you would call a receipt. My good friend Michael French is the one who taught me about receipts, and I love him for that. I had said to Ryan one day to stop sending me nudes, so he thought it would be very funny to take it upon himself to send me that luscious photo of himself on the couch. So that is how the Laser Pants photo came to be. That was his lovely receipt to me, and I am gracious for it. Boromir's sword is a fantastic sword, and it's one that should be in the Hall of Armor and Swords, Valaverse headquarters, and it is on the list to eventually get Boromir's sword. However, I felt that the swords that I currently have from Lord of the Rings in the Valaverse office were my favorite of the films, Aragorn being my favorite character. His swords, his ranger sword, then the reforged Sarge of Narsil, which became Andúril. They are probably some of the most flawless sword designs ever. And then I have Gandalf's wand and sword, Glamdring, which is another fantastic sword. Boromir's sword does not, in my opinion, fit with those swords. It's very broad. It's got a wide bottom. It's shorter. While it is a fantastic sword, I just don't feel like it fit with the current display. But I do have plans to get Boromir's sword. I do have plans to get Theoden's sword, Éomer's sword. So eventually, as we expand the armory, I will get more of the swords from Lord of the Rings. If you saw the old Valaverse headquarters video, I did have a display of the original Palitoy Action Force line. Now, I do plan on putting that back up here at the new office. I just haven't gotten around to it. And since then, I've acquired more pieces for my vintage Action Force collection. But I do have a spot in mind, and I do think that I will fix that, and I will have a nice display of the Palitoy Action Force range, because I'm only missing a few more pieces, and it would be nice to have the whole collection on display. So don't worry, I will get that vintage Action Force collection up. That would be an absolute dream come true, to be able to do Lord of the Rings figure line. I've always praised the Toy Biz line from the early 2000s because it was at the height of Lord of the Rings when it all came out. And the first couple of figures that came out weren't the greatest, but they course corrected incredibly fast, and they started implementing things on those figures that they were implementing on their early Marvel Legends, which were Spider-Man classics at the time with double elbows, double knees. So those Lord of the Rings figures were fantastic, as time went on. And just before the line ended, they were doing amazing figures. The likenesses, the deco, the detail, all of it was great. Now, the sad part is, because so many soft PVC parts were used on those figures, when PVC breaks down, there is this additive called plasticizer that ends up separating from the plastic and almost like leaking out, which is what happens on vintage Masters of the Universe figures, early Playmates Ninja Turtles figures, where they get that sticky feeling. And the Lord of the Rings figures were notorious for getting that sticky feeling. And that is the plasticizer breaking down and coming out of the figure. Now, with Masters of the Universe Ninja Turtles, it took longer to happen, but Lord of the Rings, it happened much quicker. So whatever plastic they were using just broke down faster. And it's unfortunate because, you know, a lot of those figures have that sticky feeling, and you know, you don't want that in, you know, in your collection. Now, when I saw that Diamond Select was doing Lord of the Rings figures, I got very excited because I said, well, okay, a company can do modern Lord of the Rings, modern articulation, face inkjet printing. And I was very excited, and they came out and I was very disappointed. I think Diamond Select does amazing stuff, but the Lord of the Rings figures just let me down a bit. I felt like they didn't implement things like new technologies like the inkjet face printing that we have. So Aragorn's face looked a little sleepy. And I just think they could have pushed it and taken that Toy Biz line and just taken it to the next level. You know, and then, you know, some of the figures, Legolas, Gimli, were missing. And then some of the figures like Legolas and Gimli were missing some accessories. Not sure how that happened or what have you, but they ended up then correcting it and putting those accessories in with an exclusive figure, an exclusive Gollum figure. So the whole setup was just muddy, and I was a bit disappointed. However, I have said on multiple podcasts that their Build-A-Figure Sauron is one of my favorite figures I have in my collection. He's on my desk. You know, and my desk is a special spot for certain things, and Sauron made that cut because it's a fantastic figure. The original one by Toy Biz was great, but this one is perfect. It definitely takes what Sauron was and makes a great version of him in toy form. So with Diamond Select continuing to do more figures, I don't think they're doing it, you know, in a fast enough way. You know, they're doing like two at a time. You know, I don't think anyone's ever going to touch the Toy Biz, you know, range where the amount of characters they did, just because of tooling and costing and just times have changed. So I would like to see Diamond Select get better and do more. I just am not sure if that's going to happen. But I've thought about the Lord of the Rings line, and if I were to get the Lord of the Rings license, how I would handle it. Since so many companies have done the movie accurate figures, I thought, well, maybe it might be cool to do something where we almost took a page out of the Four Horsemen's book and created new versions of the Lord of the Rings characters just without, as if the movie didn't exist, no actor likenesses or things like that, and just did a, you know, an Aragorn, just a new design or new version of Aragorn. And I thought it might be cool to work with Weta on something like that because they did such great designs for the original movies. And I would love to go to them and say, hey, how would you design Aragorn if it wasn't Viggo Mortensen and it wasn't in film, if it was just taken off the pages of Tolkien's books and made a new character? So that's about how I would do it. I know that was a very long answer, but I've definitely given it some thought, and I just wanted to let you guys know where I stand on Lord of the Rings. When you say doomed Indiana Jones line, I'm not sure if you mean their 3 3/4 retro line or their 6-inch line. I think this can actually apply to both in a way, because I do have a special place for Indiana Jones. I have the entire Kenner run, and I have some of the new retro figures and some of the 6-inch figures, very much in that Legends style. And it was interesting that they did it, and I was excited for it. Now, they took some liberties that I wasn't entirely excited about. I'm a big fan of modern day articulation and technologies being used. Now, some figures on Star Wars Black Series have removed things like double elbows, double knees. I'm not sure why over time they went to single articulation on those joints, but to me, it's a step backwards. And I did notice on the Indiana Jones figures that they were taking that backward step again, and they were giving single elbow, single knees. And some people might think that it looks better with the cut of his jacket or his pants. I tend to disagree. I think, you can do double elbows and double knees flawlessly with any sort of drapery or fabric or anything like that. So I didn't like that they took that step. Now, there were other decisions I wasn't quite sure why they did what they did. For instance, offering Belloc and Brody in a 2-pack when those two characters never shared a scene together. And you took two suited characters, which people might look at as just sort of bland characters, and you put them in a 2-pack together. So that sort of decision making was very odd. So, what would I fill holes in with other villains, bad guys? I mean, I know that a lot of Indiana Jones fans wanted, some of the German soldiers, but in the current climate, things like that, I think it's hard to produce that type of soldier from that era in toy form. We all kind of can understand why. So I get that. It would have been nice to have seen an Indiana Jones in, the German mechanic or the German soldier disguise as he was in, in the original Kenner line. But, I'm not sure why they kind of, took the liberties they did. They did give us, the baddies that we needed. We did get, Tote and Belloc and his ceremonial and his safari and his white outfit. Now, could have taken that a step further, and you could have done Belloc in how he was in the beginning of Raiders with his safari hat, which was a pretty cool look. So I would like to have seen that done. I don't believe they did the German mechanic in the 6-inch line. I think that was a big miss, because you could have done that figure and you could have given him an extra bloody head after Indy starts punching him before he then kicks him into the props plane and shreds him to pieces. But yeah, the German mechanic could have been cool to do. I'm trying to think who else. I do believe they did the Templar Knight, which is great. I haven't picked that up yet, but I've been meaning to get back and get the 6-inch figures that I'm missing. And then the same thing with the 3 3/4-inch retro line. I think, yes, could you have done more German soldiers and things like that? Sure. It would have been nice to have seen maybe the Grail protectors that end up getting in the firefight with the guys, the Germans in the tank toward the end of Last Crusade. But I think there's options to have filled some gaps. I don't think there's many options, though. I would love to share more of what it's like to run a toy company. You can comment down below and let me know specifically what you'd like to know or see, and I would be happy to share that in some future Valaverse Declassified videos. It's a very hard thing to do. It's a very much a hit the ground running. There's no guidebook, so you have to wear a lot of hats. I know that I had to learn a lot of things I never knew how to do. Being a designer, Hasbro, Jazzwares, I was just a designer. And then when I started Valaverse and the Action Force line, I had to become a businessman, a marketer, an engineer, a cost engineer, a social media person. So all that stuff, no one taught me how to do it. I just had to kind of figure it out. And, along the way, you definitely make some mistakes and you kind of learn and figure it all out. But, there's a lot that goes into it. I've definitely have voiced my opinions on people starting toy companies, we are in an interesting time where I think there's this false sense of starting a toy company and that it might be easy. And, people think, well, okay, crowdfunding is a big thing. And if I could just come up with a cool idea and get it crowdfunded, then I can get, people to help pay for it. And then, I'm good to go. There's so much more that goes into it that some of those individuals don't expect. For instance, there was tens of thousands of dollars that I put out of pocket, my own money, to start even before the Kickstarter launched. You have to pay individuals for sculpting. You have to pay individuals for 3D printing and paint masters and making models, and then logo designs and website designs and all that stuff that isn't tied into your Kickstarter. Your Kickstarter or your any sort of crowdfund is basically for the product. And then with that product, are you factoring in shipping? And if you're doing a crowdfund, are you taking into consideration that, say you factor in shipping? Well, in a year from then, or a year and a half, when the product actually ships, shipping actually might be more expensive. So you have to think about insurance. Is the shipment from the factory insured by them or by the ocean freight company? Are you going to get secondary insurance? I have my factories insure the shipments, but I also have secondary insurance as well should anything happen on the water or when it's being loaded and taken to my warehouse in the United States. You got to have insurance for whatever warehouse you're at. Some people pay fulfillment companies, which is fine if you don't have an office or warehouse space. I understand, but one, you have to look at the fact that you pay a fulfillment company, well, that's eating into your profit margin in a big way. And two, I'm of the belief that you shouldn't get into something halfway. If you're going to start a toy company, you should be fulfilling your stuff. You should not be paying another company to do it and handling that end. You want to oversee that. I had companies come to me and say, hey, we'd love to fulfill your stuff. And at the end of the day, I didn't want someone else handling my stuff. I wanted to be on the floor, seeing the orders, being part of the process. So if you're not doing that, then you probably shouldn't have a toy company. And that's just my opinion. Some people might disagree with me. I just think it's either all or nothing. And I think when I see companies or individuals sort of doing it halfway, I take it as a disrespect to the toy industry and myself, because you should be all in. I'm not going to turn around tomorrow and say, I think I might be a stand-up comic, but I think I'm just going to try it like I'm just going to dip my toe in the water. I think that's disrespectful to stand-up comics to actually put the time in. So my thing is, if you're going to get into the toy industry and you're going to start a toy company, you should be all in with it. Do not be halfway or a quarter of the way or a third of the way or what have you. If you want to do it by yourself, you have to be all in. If you have some partners, okay, then you can spread it around a little bit. I don't have any partners. I did it all on my own. And, that's just the route I decided to take. So, it's a hard business. It's also an evolving business. You have to make sure stuff you're doing is great, but what is the next thing? Because, yes, you get, okay, series 1, but then series 2 better be good, or series 3, or some new license or thing like that. So you have to keep evolving. You have to keep yourself in the spotlight, make yourself relevant, and make sure people know you and know your brand. So, if you're constantly doing crowdfunds and you have this long wait in between product, what are you doing to keep your brand or your company relevant? There's so many factors involved, and that's why I'm saying you can't be anything but all in. And that's just my take on it. I know some people might not agree. There are some companies out there doing it half in, which is fine. I don't think it's right. So I guess my advice is, if you're going to get into the toy industry, be prepared to go all in. And that's your hand that you're dealt. Go all in, and really put 100% effort into what you're doing. Otherwise, If you put 50% or 25%, well, you're probably only going to get that in return. The only way you're going to get 100% back is if you put 100% in. But if there's more you want to know specifically about running a toy company, starting a toy company, anything like that, throw the comments below and we'll add it into the next Valaverse Declassified video.